I have just a few implications for our discussion. What I was happy to visit one conference in Germany last year, and my colleague Thomas Lindemann from University of Lille, France, he was writing a very interesting paper about Hollywoodization, and it describes also the role of media, which is very important in our life now. Actually, even in Syrian case and Iraqi case, we have two different wars, which is a real war, what will be described by Niklas and Wessam here, because I'm happy to see here these guys were dealing with a real thing. And besides this real war, we have also, let's say, a war between narratives, which is produced by media, because media always stimulates conflict. It's a simple answer, because conflict is always easy to sell than peace. So we in the circle of political sciences, we became a little bit worried because this role of peace studies, this is vanishing somehow. It's not important in the conflict because of this war of narratives. It is important. And in this war of narratives, we have always good guys and bad guys. But in Syrian case, it's very difficult. In this dilemma, who are really the good guys? Because Assad and his regime, they are defined as bad, but also part of opposition. Also, you know, Islamic State with this very strong identity, or even in this war of narratives. We don't really know even how it is real strength. And it is also bad. So it's not it's accommodating such framework where good guys like Harry Potter as Lord Voldemort. They are both created by this Hollywoodization. They are both heroes, and you have you can choose which hero you will accept. So it's very difficult questions. But well, let's start with Niklas, and he is a very famous photographer, which in these conflict areas. So the floor is yours.
Thanks. Hello. This is
okay.
Whichever kicks ass, I'll take it. Thanks. Okay, yeah. My name is Niklas Meltio. I see you all there. I'm a photojournalist from Finland, and I've been covering lately the Arab Spring since Libya. From the late 2011, I started to cover Syria and the conflict there, and covered it for 2 years, forth and back, sometimes spending long time since, sometimes shorter times, and then I moved to Iraq, did some Egypt and stuff there in between. Yeah, I could actually. It's about understanding the conflict, I think. The conflict for the media, I feel, started very late. The conflict in Syria is much longer, and to understand the situation today in Iraq, we really need to understand what happened in Syria. I will not start from the beginning. I will start from where I feel during my coverage was a turning point in the conflict, when the radicalization actually started. We hardly remember in media because the access was very hard. It was hard to get in, it was hard to cover it, and there wasn't actually so many covering it for a long time. So we don't remember the time of the revolution, of democratic revolution in the country. We only remember when the radicalization began. And I think these images, this was a series I published when I got frustrated enough myself for the Western community not really reacting on our coverage on what was happening like they did in Libya, and it was effective. But the role of media has been, I think, very important in this conflict. So this was serious, I think. After this time, I started to feel the radicalization on the ground. The winter was coming. This was in September. In November already the money was out, guns was out. So people started to turn into radical movements to basically just get the daily needs. I mean, living in these circumstances that the people were living in for a long time. I mean, there were days when I watched 200 bodies combined, shattered up, children, women. I was in the hospitals when they got shelled and bombed away. It was an environment that radicalizes anybody who stays there long enough. So I think we need to understand this concept of what happened to really understand what's going on today. And this whole situation gave room to radical movements to get their foot into the country. But this didn't actually start with Syria. This started already way longer, 2003 Iraq. So the role of ISIS in this conflict, I think, in Syria itself, it became pretty late, the issue. But it was a movement that got its foot there and moved it over to Iraq. The Kurds played a big role in this, I think, also. And I think the Kurds has been a lot of also kind of could be a solution in this whole issue also. During this time, this was Aleppo. And I think Aleppo became the zone for radicalization. That was where Jabhat al-Nusra got their stronghold. I spent a lot of time before this in 2012 with Salafis, extreme Salafis in Jabal Zawiya region in Idlib, which today I still consider are one of the most moderate groups today in Syria. So they didn't radicalize themselves more than they were radical from the beginning. But we also tend to forget that there are still groups in Syria fighting for democracy, groups fighting against the Islamists. And yeah. So I think the problem with ISIS today is a lot of the concept of personalizing pure evil and not understanding where ISIS comes from. I don't think the question so much is why are they doing what they do, I think, and how should we get rid of them. I think the question is more, which media doesn't really put out there, is why is ISIS needed? ISIS is not the majority of the population. ISIS is a minority that gets the support of local militias, gets the support of people who are in need for something. I think this is an issue that has been going on for years. Today, media presents ISIS and the crisis in Iraq as something new, a new conflict. And we need to see the link between these conflicts and the continuity of it. And also to, by that, be able to kind of look forward at what will this end up with. I mean, ISIS at the moment, it's a local movement in Iraq and Syria. The Daesh will spread. I mean, we have a lot of foreign fighters going in there now, and they will accept almost anybody to fight with them, and they will radicalize other areas in the future years to come. The one was serious for you. This is from last June in Iraq, the border at the front of the ISIS front between Kirkuk and the ISIS areas. What I really found out during this time, this gun market in the streets also, and which I can see the radicalization happening now in Iraq against Muslims in some way, against Arabs, because Kurdish population is first-hand always Kurds, and secondly comes the religious identity. In most cases, I believe, and I can see that this situation is being very hostile against ethnic Arabs living in the Kurdish regions and around. Partially because ISIS in manpower, you know, when you go into these villages with the police, you will not find too many members of ISIS. You will find people supporting their idea, many people supporting an idea. You will find maybe if they arrest 20 persons, you will have one that can be identified as ISIS member. The rest are just locals running around with Kalashnikovs. They need another option, you know, for that. So yeah, more or less my point in this is that I think the media feeds a lot of this idea without really understanding what the Arab culture is about, what's happening in the Middle East, and the links between these conflicts and what has led to these conflicts are feeding the idea of and kind of moving the conflict into certain directions. And the idea they are feeding is the you know, the big bad ISIS, but I think the problem is rooted much deeper. It's rooted in long-term conflict that radicalizes people, which we should have before, you know, intervene with in many ways. It's also the situation with ISIS isn't just local. It's an international conflict between Syria, Russia, Iran, and the United States, who are the ones who should be solving this issue also. So yeah, I think we can let this roll on, and we can move the speech to the next one. We can, I mean, have a dialogue, I think, if there's something, you know, you want to comment.
Yeah, please. I think it's next will be Valen, who is working really with these results of the conflict with refugees issues, which is, yeah, we have to know. So please.
Hi everybody, my name is Wissam Norm. I am Palestinian origin, living. Everybody hear me? It's working. Speaker. Palestinian refugee was living in Syria since 48. Normally, my family moved to Syria in 48. I live in Yarmouk camp, which is like a suburb of the capital of Damascus, which is containing around 250,000 Palestinians and also around 1 million Syrian people, which is known like the capital of the Palestinian refugees in Syria. I work since 10 years in a Palestinian NGO, which was working normally with youth development and youth empowerment for Palestinian refugees in the camps. The time of the Syrian revolution began, we began to turn to work a little bit on the relief and on the advocacy for the Syrian people's rights, and to show what is the reality there and what's happening in the Syrian areas where we work. In fact, in the beginning of the Syrian revolution, we were not shown at all in the media or in any part of the Syrian revolution until, like, I think 1 year after the Syrian revolution began. We began to be shown as Palestinian community participating in the Syrian revolution and in the Syrian situation and the updates of what's happening there. Mainly, nobody has interest from the media to see what is happening in the Palestinian community in Syria. Firstly, I think it was not so much interesting for the Syrian people to show how much the Palestinian people are involved, because it was a Syrian revolution. And secondly, because we didn't also want to be part of this in the media. So we took a decision to keep it calm and down We don't want to show how much demonstration in the Palestinian camps. Even sometimes we told everybody, okay, if you want to demonstrate, you demonstrate outside the Palestinian camps. We want to keep this a safe place for IDPs, for Syrians who come from other areas and more, and who need a safe place. We continue like this until 2012, September. Even after the Syrian regime began to bomb the Palestinian camps, we decided to keep it down a little bit on the media. Main reason, we don't want to take part of this. Second reason, we don't want to be more exposed to the Syrian regime violence. In September 2012, we decided we cannot anymore keep it down. Mainly what we were doing is Facebook. As you know, most of the Syrian activists were doing. We noticed on our activity on Facebook that if we speak about something, for example, today 12 children was killed by the Syrian plane who bombed Yarmouk. The Syrian regime was calling us the next day that it's not true. We didn't bomb it by plane, it was a mortar shell. So we saw that it's a little bit important because they care about what we are writing. We began to translate everything in English and to raise it more. So even they began to negotiate with us. It's not true, you are not out of food. You have food. We told them, no, we don't have food. 20 children died because of this. And this is our declaration. Told, okay, we negotiate about this and you delete all this information? Told, okay, they care a lot about this. So we will do it a little bit more. Normally this is what we were mainly doing on Facebook. And then after we began to translate in English or other languages, we had got interest from other media outside. So we had to do a group who coordinate advocacy for your. And this is our declaration. And here we began. Okay, we negotiate about this and you delete all this information? But okay, they care a lot about this. So we will do it all over the world. A little bit more. We begin to help to do. Normally, this is what we were mainly doing on Facebook. And then after we began to translate the English or other languages, we had good interest from other media outside. So we had to do a group who coordinate advocacy for Yarmouk camp and for the other camps. And here we began we received a lot of calls. This is an example of advocacy outside. Also we were from Europe, from Asia. Demonstration for the children, but also with good videos, with good photos, with good message and clear message. That also was, we call it sexy for the media. They like to see it and to share it and to draw their attention. Here UNRWA also adopted this, UN adopted the same story and began to advocate for it. And I think here we begin to feel the changes by in Geneva conference or in other conferences. Yarmouk camp and Palestinian camps was one of the main issues that was discussed. In the declaration of Geneva negotiation that happened between the regime and the opposition forces, one of the most important points was Yarmouk camp. That everybody agreed that food will begin to enter to Yarmouk camp. And this is an example how, because as my friend told that information and access of information is very difficult in Syria. To organize this campaign, we have lost 3 people who was photographer or journalist who was documenting the facts, videos, taking photos. For sure, international media could not access these areas in the middle of Damascus or in other areas. Most of the media was entering to the north part of Syria because it was open borders with Turkey. So we began to feel, okay, we have to share this information and to do it more more credible and more accessible and more equality information that will attract the international media and that will pressure the two sides to stop any kind of violence against civilians, or at least allow humanitarian access for areas where we are working. Because mainly I am working, my main job is not media, I am working in a relief organization to enter food and to other resources and other basic needs for the people who is in the besieged areas. And mainly, yeah, this is like the most important example we have that we did. It was this campaign about Yarmouk camp, but then this campaign began to move to other places and to other areas. I think you remember East Rural Damascus, East Ghouta. We have helped them a lot to do the same campaign about the PCH, about the entering of medicine, about the rights of the children to have education, and to there is now a campaign about to not have recruitment of children and participation of children in the war, not only by the regime but also by the other forces. Also advocacy campaigns to not target hospitals and schools and religious places like mosques or churches. And here is the the game, because also ISIS and Nusra begin to follow up our Facebook page. So we have some contacts like, okay, we didn't go to your school and told we don't want boys and girls to be mixed, which is IS. For example, one day they came to one school and they told, you don't have to mix the boys and the girls. So we write this in the Facebook. The next day they came and it's not true, we didn't come. No, some group of you come. Okay, can you tell me who come and we will speak with them to not come again? But this is not like everywhere in Syria. This is in an area where they care to have social and acceptance, because still they don't have the power to control it totally. I mean, this is not the case in Raqqa, and this is the case near Damascus, where they care about the civilians because they need their acceptance. This is an example also of how media activists in Syria have used their media or used the information they got to get some access and to get some interest from the people to push the political sides or the militia to be more accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Bassam. And our next speaker and last in this panel is a member of European Parliament, Mr. Brando Benifei.
Thank you. I'm here also to give the salute, also be welcome to this conference from the S&D Group, who is a partner of this conference. Myself, I'm a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Parliament, and before, I must say that before being an MEP, as a Vice President of the Young European Socialists, I had the occasion to discuss, as already mentioned before, with people, activists from the Arab Springs in the area, but also if I think of also what happened with Gezi Park in Turkey, with other people I knew that were there and protesting against the actions of the government there. All of them gave me a strong message and insisted very much on how important was how the media were covering the events, and how they felt important that the whole world could understand what really was happening from independent points of view. So I think it's very important what's being done by the media, also by the people who are here today, to let the larger public understand what happening in the areas of war, of areas of social unrest, of rebellion of various types. You also understand how now what's happening now in Hong Kong also is so much problematic for the mainland Chinese government, because it's so exposed with the media, with the new media that were already mentioned before, but also by the traditional media, in a combination that is making these kind of events becoming really on the spotlight worldwide. I think ISIS really understood how important is this role of the media, and compared to, if you remember, what was the videos of Bin Laden, for example, we have gone much further in a way of using the media, the videos. I was recently watching a video translated, subtitled in Italian, explaining why it was important to, also from my country, from Italy, to support the ISIS struggle, and to come and fight. It was realized in a very professional way. It's a really change of how the communication is made. It's a bit westernized in some aspects, I would say, in the way the message is conveyed. But also, if you see, in fact, ISIS is attacking the Western media a lot with what we've been saying, the beheadings, and because it considers it a threat, in my opinion, because at the same time it enacted rules which are very tight for the journalists staying in the areas that were conquered by ISIS, to try to get in terms with some of the journalists there, to accept that they do reporting, but at their own terms, with their own rules. So in a way to try to find a way to have a better, from their point of view, representation of what is happening. A very detailed set of rules that, in my opinion, shows how they are focusing also on the outreach they can get from what is happening in their area. Also because, for example, in my opinion, media also has been used by ISIS to show how to the local population, in a way to build a new narrative, how they are trying to build a new identity in the area based on a sectarian solidarity, overcoming the borders that were created by the end of the Western rule in the area, in a way that is conveying a message of a new identity building based on sectarian religious politics, but also challenging directly the Western culture, portrayed as the Western powers as the ones that wanted to give the people of the area the identity they wanted, the divisions they wanted to maintain. I think ISIS is focusing on that, and it's trying to build its own narrative on this with strong mediatic means, but also mediatization of these conflicts in the area, and especially I'm referring again to the ISIS because of the strong also violence of the messages they are conveying with the beheadings, and also the recruitment videos that are published. I think it's a way also to, maybe it's partly it's wanted and partly probably it's a consequence that they didn't calculate completely, that it's making the people taking sides among the Muslim communities. People that minorities of them are becoming convinced that they should side with ISIS. Even people who have not any connection with the Sunni extremist reasoning behind the ISIS fight. I know of people from my country, again, just to give an example, I know quite well, who didn't have any background, religious background, who became fascinated by ISIS, by their message, and went to fight and converted themselves to the fight, not being a Muslim even at the beginning. Not many, but a few people even were convinced so much. On the other side, you see that the majority, and also with external actions that portray their positions, also with demonstrations, you see that many Muslim communities abroad are showing that they are against ISIS in a very explicit way. Because on one way they see how explicit, how violent, how radical, how direct was the media message of ISIS. On the other side, so there was a reaction, as I said, some people who were fascinated by this narrative. On the other side, there was a strong reaction, also wanting to show that they were not having anything to do with ISIS, that Muslim communities abroad were against, and that it was not a war of religion that they would support. So it's interesting how the media are also influencing this kind of use by the media of these people, by the ISIS in particular, which I'm referring to now, in a way that they shape also how the events develop. So I think it's just as a conclusion, I think that for my short point, that these examples I made show how important is the media, how important is the media freedom, and how relevant for them, how significant is the attack on media freedom through violent and more, how can I say, diplomatic, but also hard ways that has been done on the field by the ISIS towards the freedom of media. The media that can show how the things are, can show how violence is not the solution to internal divisions of communities, and how it's the war and the violence is always a horror when you face them. And I also understand that, as was said, that that kind of environment radicalizes everyone very easily, as it was said. But if we want I think that if we want to have a positive action from Western countries there, we really have to understand over the different radicalization what is really happening. Also the general public, not just the experts on the field. And so the media there are doing a very, very important job. So I think it was also important to have this conference today to discuss this, and I want to congratulate also the other organizers apart from us, apart the S&D, and so I think this is my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Brando. I have for Niklas for one comment.
Yeah, there's one also important thing I think we should acknowledge in this situation, which started actually with the Arab Spring a lot, is the citizen journalism, the social media, and the role of media in a conflict. Back in the days, media used to be a propaganda tool for all parties in a conflict. And when this time is over now, as we have social media, all the extremist groups has got their own media outlet, and also the main media in West is relying a lot on citizen journalism, which we should always remember lacks the reliability, and a lot of propaganda is again coming out in the form that it used to be back in the days. So these are, I think, some topics that we are really struggling with in the media world at the moment. The citizen journalism in general, I mean, the first part of the Syrian war was in the big media outlets more or less covered by citizen journalism, and video outtakes that turned later out to be 6-year-old pieces from the Mexican drug wars and stuff, presented as video stuff taken in Syria. So there's a lot of problematics, I think, in today's covering of war, and especially when the environment's becoming way more hostile for journalists than it used to actually be.
Okay, thank you. Before I give your turn to the audience, I reserve as a moderator first question for all of you, for myself. So my question is, what do you think? One side, this is a real ongoing conflict with very difficult and very hardly solved problems there. And there is a kind of culture of fear promoted by media, which makes these two different worlds. So it's very difficult, of course, to give a good solution for that. How to put the media work right, how to, or which formula you can use for this conflict resolution on these conditions, under these circumstances. But as some of you are practitioners, maybe you have some recommendations also. Just, but we start. Let's start with politicians.
Yeah, but so what is the point for you to discuss?
Have you
your reflection on what?
Yeah, but have you any outcome, positive outcome for these reflections that we have today here?
Well, I think that, as I said, I think it also for the reasons that were very correctly pointed out by our other speaker, is that we need reliable media. It's a very difficult point, because I also have seen the pieces that were taken from different places and different years and proposed as something from the field. It happened also on the other big conflict we had recently in Gaza, that were different problems with this kind of citizen journalism, useless propaganda, and I think this is a big issue that I think ISIS understood quite well, because in fact they tried to convince, with one of the rules they enacted when they conquered one of the provinces, to the journalists that didn't flee, was that they could use the official big agencies like Reuters, but and send the press releases there, but after their control. So this way they could have the big world press agencies get press releases from journalists, independent ones, but in the end that were controlled before, under threat, by ISIS. So it's a subtle way. That's how I interpreted it. And they prohibited instead to have a direct contact with televisions. So because they probably felt it was more difficult to control what could be put on screen. How I felt about that when I read about those rules was that they tried to find an intelligent way from their point of view to manipulate a bit what would arrive also to the press agencies that we consider very reliable. The main international ones like Reuters, etc., international press agency, etc. So Associated Press, etc. So this is what I would get from this, is that we really need professional. We still need, as after also the Arab Springs and what happened in the area with a lot of direct communication through social media. I must say we got a lot of enthusiasm from a direct reporting from the area, also by the people who were directly involved in the events. But what we should get from this short discussion is that we need also professional media that can be fully reliable, otherwise we would get and it's not easy always to have it fully reliable, but this is a big issue. But this is a value that we must pursue, especially in those situations where, as was said in the introduction, we must avoid falling. I mean, as I say this from a political point of view, we should avoid falling into the trap of Hollywood, as you said, Hollywoodizing the situation with the heroes and anti-heroes, etc. That is easily pushed by propaganda media that maybe not always we are easily able to perceive as it is. So we really need independent media to let us understand what is really happening. Otherwise, we will not be able also as public opinion, as politicians of various levels, to pursue what we really want to pursue in the area as people who are involved in some way, because in various ways the Western Europe, Western countries, and European Union is involved in the area, but also as a politician, as a lawmaker and decision maker, and others who have even higher responsibility than I have, must have the best and more precise and more reliable accounts as possible to take the right decision. So this is a big value for us, a big thing to try to maintain.
Thank you.
No, I think it's also very important because the media never spoke why ISIS is strong in Syria now, and what is the reality, what they are doing on the ground to gain people. Because I know that they are in West, for example, in West Damascus, they have thousands of fighters that nobody knows about them. Does anybody knows? And I didn't see any Western media or any media speak why they are gaining this power. Because if we really want to understand what they are doing, we have to see why they are gaining this 40,000 fighters on the ground, why people are joining them. It's not true that they are forcing everybody to fight with them, because it's not their policy in the region. Why people are accepting them in areas and cities like Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, and what they are giving to the people. And this is the only way for politicians to understand really the situation, if really anybody want to fight them, or to finish this danger which is extremism in the societies, and especially in Syria. I know in areas many areas like Deir ez-Zor or Damascus, they provide food for the people, they provide protection, they provide electricity, You know, they have free transportation in Raqqa, they have all these services that they are giving to the people to gain their power. At the meantime, when you Western power wanted to fight them, they bombed the gas station which is providing electricity for the people. And you know, I know that it's providing what's called resources for ISIS, but how much now in this way of fighting and how much effects it can. I know exactly that now IS and Nusra is more powerful in the society and more accepted because of the way that the Western power is fighting them. And I never saw this in the media, spoken in the media. Because it's very important to see how much, if Western power is wanting to fight them, how much they are gaining the people also.
Yeah, to continue on that, I think the one issue is, for example, which the Western communities altogether, not just the media, but the communities altogether forget is, or don't always even know. I mean, one key point for ISIS in Iraq was Mosul, which gave them the whole borderline to the Syria, and the fact that Mosul was since 2008 under more or less Islamic mafia. It was held by militants that took a lot of advantage of the people and had just a cruel regime there. So ISIS was for the locals, for the Arabs, it was a better choice of two bad choices, more or less. And that's, I think, that's happening in many areas, and that's a piece we forget. I mean, people want to talk about the refugees, cover the refugees coming from Mosul. People want to hear the story that they are fleeing ISIS. No, they are fleeing the Iraqi airstrikes. They are fleeing the American airstrikes, because that's what kills the civilians. ISIS gives them the options. It's about hearts and minds. If you have to give up cigarettes and watching football, but you know you can live a normal life which you weren't able to do for years, that's not a big choice to give. I mean, there are minorities who are really put out there. There are the Yazidis who are hunted down by most everybody. Christians, they didn't have to flee Mosul. They pay the taxes from the Quran. They pay the taxes of misbelievers, and they can stay there, or they leave. But I mean, for the people on the grassroots level, we have to remember the choice isn't that bad for them, where they come from. So ISIS can actually win hearts and minds in areas, and that's the thing we are actually fighting here. Not ISIS, not guys with Kalashnikovs. It's about the idea. Why is ISIS needed on the ground? So we have to get to the root of those issues, and also with the media, we have to get to the root of those issues, because the media plays such a viral role. Libya showed that without the media presence, without the National Transitional Council leading the media in an early stage, there would have been no international interventions. And in Syria we saw that. Media weren't able to work there, so there was no information, more or less, coming out from there for a long time, which the media is more or less the power that forces people to react, forces people to force the governments to react. And yeah, so I think that to question about ISIS is somehow needed on the ground, and we need to get to the root of that level. That yeah, why are they needed there, and start to work on those issues.
Yes, thank you. Before we have short break, have we any questions? Yes. Well, it's a lot of questions. But okay, let's start with the lady. And please introduce.
Hello, my name is Elena. I come from Lithuania, and thanks so much for your interventions. Brando has mentioned the propaganda as like the social media being used as a tool of propaganda in many cases in the conflicts in the Middle East, and also how propaganda is kind of mainstream through the main channels. You mentioned Reuters and stuff. However, I personally believe there's also a lot of propaganda in the mainstream media in the West. And as a member of the European Parliament who represents us and who is part of a lot of decision making, also I think you are in the foreign policy working group, right? So I wonder how much influence does the mainstream media have on your and your colleagues' views and decisions in terms of policy making?
How could I ask that? So, okay, so we don't collect all of that. Do we have time to do it like this?
Yeah, well, let's start with.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. In fact, what I meant is we should, what we understood from what's happening is that we need more sources of information, but reliable ones, and often it's true that Western mainstream media are not. The point is, I must say, as MEPs, more than the public opinion in general, and this is not a positive, this is not overall positive, but I must say it is already, it is at least something. I think that if we are serious about our job, we should try to be very careful, in fact, about how the things are portrayed by mainstream Western media. We have to try to use more different sources. I'm just saying where I said what I said is that we must not be, because I've seen that also from my political area, not be over enthusiastic and relying in a kind of ideological way on the social media and on the spot information, real time, that sometimes became very strong. It's also on the Ukraine Russia conflict. We have this issue. I mean, I think that as MEPs we should have the right. We must have also the responsibility to be to get ourselves the right instruments to be able to go over also the Western propaganda that is there also in the mainstream media. I fully understand your point and I agree with it. I must say that it's our responsibility to be always, judging with care and with more sources.
Okay, Niklas has a comment.
Yeah, I think to your question, more or less, we're living in a real big transitional phase of media culture at the moment. You're right, the media has always been full of propaganda, and not always even propaganda, but just like not knowing enough to cover a story. But I think what we're heading towards is instead of living in a world where BBC represents reliable media, period, that's over. And I think the phase is now that we're not there yet, but I can really see it's happening, that people start to follow certain journalists. So it's not anymore about media outlets being the reliable source, but specific journalists that we follow. And that puts a lot of pressure on the media, media education, already in primary school, how to read media. So instead of giving you the truth, now the people are demanded to find it out themselves. So you need to choose certain journalists that you feel are representing different points of views and being reliable. So now it's more or less up to the readers or the consumers to pick those out and build their own idea of the situation. And I think that's really healthy, because you can really put a name tag on the story, that this is somebody I follow because this one has done like this and this and this. It doesn't go under some media corporation. So the people are talking about the death of media. Yeah, media business is doing shit today, but journalism is doing better than ever before. So I think that the new wave of freelancers working, selling their stuff to media outlets and having all this range of outlets will give you like a lot of new reliable sources that you can follow, and I think that's the future of media. But it takes a lot of years and generations maybe to grow into this type of how you read media today, because yeah, it's just a transition going on.
Okay, but somehow you no. Thank you. I have told that. Yeah, I know. But I have told we have just time for 2 questions, so we's quite
Fight
quick,
for it.
quick to have microphones.
Okay, so my name is Mölder. I have 2 questions for you. What was the most dangerous situation that you have ever faced when you were picturing there or broadcasting? And have you ever interviewed any of those guys from ISIS yourself? The second question is, from your own perspective, how so far do you think that ISIS represent a danger to the world, or to the whole world?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, from personal point of view, yeah, I've been through a lot of shit, and I should probably not be here today anymore. But Syria was in general, it was a really shitty place to cover for a long time. It was a hell zone. I stayed, forth and back for 2 years in the front lines with the fighters, and a lot of my colleagues, went down that road. Many are still, there in some captivity. I guess I was lucky in many ways. I guess I was lucky because I started to work so early on, so I was very well connected in art, so it made me minimize the risks of kidnappings and so on. But the shit flying in the air all the time, it's like you never know when shit's gonna hit the fan, more or less. So I don't want to talk too much about that. Actually, it's something I want to talk through my pictures. I mean, there are things you don't, it doesn't really matter. What was your second question?
Besides it's dangerous.
Yeah, how so far is dangerous? ISIS itself, it's dangerous to be increased and spreading out all over the world to the international.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. Yeah, ISIS has so far been a local organization in Iraq and Syria. It's run by locals. It's run by So and that has been their statement also pretty far. That also concerning Westerners in general, that step inside our caliphate and you're fucked. Period. But I think that is changing very fast, and that's also I think why they have been able to work. Beside other major global, organizations, extreme organizations, but now as they are involving, almost anybody from anywhere. I don't know if ISIS itself, if Daesh will like expand from within, if Baghdadi will himself like start to expand the organization, but it will have clusters in few years to come, because there will be people going home from there. And or to other places. So there will be a lot of clusters, and you can already now see how groups from Al-Qaeda are defecting and joining Daesh, and it will, I think we will see that in the years to come, really, expanding of it. And it will probably be, to some extent, a danger, especially I think to countries that hasn't experienced these kind of terrorist acts before. Like many European countries, northern countries that hasn't had this problem really. But I think we will probably see this problem, because they are from almost every country they already started to have